Alright, this is number 16 in the MacArthur Study Bible. Alright, a little refresher of 15. Basically, you had just various laws about how to do drink offerings, or if you were bringing a certain animal to sacrifice, you'd have to bring a certain amount of, fine flour mixed with oil, and then a certain amount of wine or whatever. And then you had laws concerning unintentional sin, and then presumptuous sin, where you're sinning on purpose. Deliberately, you would be cut off from the people, like the guy who was violating the Sabbath. He was put to death. And then also, they would have to make tassels on the corners of their garments and put a blue thread in the tassels of the corners of their garments. Basically, to remember the commandments, remember and do all of the commandments and be holy for your God. Alright, so you had that. And I guess also as a reminder that even though they were being punished for not believing in God in Numbers 14, that that God was not done with them, and that ultimately the next generation would get to go into the promised land. But sadly, there's going to be some more wickedness going on with the current generation under Moses, as evidenced in this chapter. Alright, so chapter 16, rebellion against Moses and Aaron. Alright, and the first 40 verses are about this rebellion, so I'm going to go ahead and read those, and then I'll go through the notes. Now Korah, the son of Izar, however you say that, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Pelath, sons of Reuben, they took men, and they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. And they gathered together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" And so when Moses heard it, he fell on his face, and he spoke to Korah and all of his company, saying, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him. That one whom he chooses he will cause to come near to him. Do this: take censers, Korah and all your company, put fire in them and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi." And then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi, it is a small thing that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to serve them, and that he has brought you near to himself, and you are all brethren, the sons of Levi, with you. Are you seeking the priesthood also? Therefore you and all your company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron that you complain against him?" And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, however you say that. Abiram, there you go, that's how you say it. The sons of Eliab, but they said, "We will not come up. It is a small thing that you have brought us out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you should keep acting like a prince over us. Is it a small thing to do that? Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. And then Moses was very angry, and he said to the Lord, do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, nor have I hurt one of them. And Moses said to Korah, tomorrow you and all your company be present before the Lord, you and they as well as Aaron. Let each of you take his censer and put incense in it, and each of you bring a censer before the Lord, 250 censers. Both you and Aaron each with his censer. And so every man took his censer, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and stood at the door of the tabernacle of meeting with Moses and Aaron. And Korah gathered all the congregation against them at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I might consume them in a moment. And then they fell on their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits and all flesh, shall one man sin, and you be angry with all the congregation? And so the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the congregation, saying, get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Abiram. It's hard to say that name. Abiram, there you go. Abiram, there you go. Abiram. And then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, depart from these tents of these wicked men. Touch nothing of theirs, lest you shall be consumed in all their sins. And so they got away from around the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of their tents with their wives, their sons, and their little children. And Moses said, by this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own will. If these men die naturally like all men, or if they are visited by the common fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a new thing, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the pit, then you shall understand that these men have rejected the Lord. Now it came to pass, as he finished speaking all of these words, that the ground split apart under them, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with all of their households, and all the men with Korah, with all their goods. So they and all those with them went down alive into the pit, and then the earth closed over them, and they perished from among the assembly. And then all of Israel who were around them fled at their cry, for they said, lest the earth swallow us up also. And a fire came out from the Lord and consumed 250 men who were offering incense. And then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, tell Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, to pick up the censers out of the blaze, for they are holy. Scatter the fire some distance away. The censers of these men who have sinned against their own souls, let them be made into hammered plates as covering for the altar, because they presented them before the Lord. Therefore they are holy, and they shall be assigned to the children of Israel. And so Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers, which those who were burned up had presented, and they were hammered out as a covering on the altar, to be a memorial to the children of Israel, that no outsider who was not a descendant of Aaron should come near to offer incense before the Lord, that he might not become like Korah and his companions, just as the Lord had said to him through Moses. I was about to say Torah. No. Alright, well, there's still a little bit more of 16, but that's all the part about Korah. Alright, some notes here. So in the first 40 verses, Korah, who was a Levite, allied with some Reubenites and some other leaders of Israel. Yeah, these guys, Dathan and Abiram, yep, and sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Pelath, sons of Reuben. Yep. And basically they instigated and organized opposition to the authority of Aaron and the priests. And their argument against Moses and Aaron was that by claiming the unique right and responsibility to represent the people before God, they took too much upon themselves based on the promise that all the congregation is holy and every one of them, and therefore the Lord is among them. Yep, you take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? Yep, and the Lord dealt with these rebels and reaffirmed his choice of Aaron. Yeah. And then in chapters 17 through 18, the Lord reinstates the duties in support of both priests and Levites, and these events took place at some unidentified place and time during the wilderness wanderings. Yeah, because chapter 17 and 18 are going to restate like the duties of the Levites. I guess to reaffirm that Aaron is still the high priest. Yeah, I guess to remind them of who the Lord wants to, be in charge. Yeah, he picked Moses and Aaron to be in charge. Alright. So Korah was descended from Levi through Kohath, he was a Kohathite, and so part of the tribe of Levi. And being the son of Kohath, he also had significant duties at the tabernacle, which of course Numbers 4 actually gave specific the duties for the sons of Kohath. Yep. Where basically they were, responsible for whenever they were leaving camp, they would take down the covering veil, and then they would cover the Ark of the Covenant with it, and they would put on it a covering of badger skins and spread over that a cloth of entirely blue, and they shall insert its poles. Yeah, so the Kohathites, they would, they were the ones who, they would carry the Ark of the Covenant. And also they were in charge of the, some of the vessels, like the lampstand and all that, the lampstand. And then also, of course, some silverware as well, utensils. Yeah, but those were just some of the duties of the Kohathites. But anyway, but Korah, who was a Kohathite, along with some other Levites, they were involved in this rebellion with him. And these two guys who were of the tribe of Reuben, Dathan and Abiram. And they despised Moses, blaming him for taking Israel out of the land of Egypt and failing to bring them into the land of Canaan. Yeah, so basically they're blaming Moses for why they're not going into the land. No, it's not Moses' fault. No, you guys didn't believe God. Yeah, you believed the 10 spies. Yeah, you should have listened to Joshua and Caleb. But no. And because of Moses' perceived failure, even though really they failed, the people of Israel failed, but, I guess it's easier to blame someone else, maybe to blame the leader, even though it wasn't his fault. Yeah, because of Moses' perceived failure, they attacked him, joining with Korah in the rebellion against Moses and Aaron. Yeah, and basically saying, why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? Yeah, we're all holy. Come on, man. Yeah, and then Moses said, well, we'll see who's holy. Yeah, tomorrow morning the Lord will show who he is and who is holy. Yeah, so take censers, Korah, and all your company, and put fire in them, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi. So I guess Moses rebuking them there. Yep. And then Moses said to Korah, hear now, you sons of Levi, is it a small thing to you that God of Israel has separated you from the congregation to bring you near to himself, to do the work in the tabernacle of the Lord, to stand before the congregation to serve him, and that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you? Are you seeking the priesthood also? And are you seeking the priesthood also? Yeah. Since, Aaron was the high priest. Therefore you and all of your company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron that you complain against him? And then Moses sent a call to Dathan and Abiram, and they're like, we're not coming down. Yeah, you didn't lead us into the promised land. Yeah, you didn't lead us into that land flowing with milk and honey. You brought us up out of the land, to kill us in the wilderness, that you should keep acting like a prince over us. Yeah, you not brought us into that land. You haven't given us the inheritance of fields and vineyards. We're not going to... will you put out the eyes of these men? Yeah, we're not coming up. Yeah, they don't want to, come up and, do what Moses told these other men to do, to offer incense and all that. Yeah, and basically that the Lord would choose, who is holy, even though really he's going to judge them. Yeah, but Dathan and Abiram don't want to come up. Yeah, they don't want to listen to Moses. Yeah. Alright. And so Moses tells Korah, you and all your company be present before the Lord, you and they as well as Aaron. Take his censer and put incense on it. Each of you bring a censer before the Lord, 250 censers. Yep. So they did that, and then they would come stand at the door of the tabernacle of meeting with Moses and Aaron, and then the glory of the Lord appears to all the congregation, and then God says, separate yourselves. Yep. But right before that happens, Moses is pretty upset whenever Dathan and Abiram refuse to, come down and obey. Yeah, well, they were a part of the rebellion. So, yeah, but, Moses says to the Lord, don't respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them. I have not hurt one of them. So Moses pled his innocence before the Lord, claiming to have been a true servant leader. Yes, and that confirms that, and this actually confirms that probably Numbers 12:3 could have been written by Moses, which Numbers 12:3 said that, he was a humble man. Yeah, and that was whenever Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses, and that wasn't good. Yeah, because Miriam got struck with leprosy, but, Moses prayed for her and she was healed. Yeah, but she had to be outside of the camp for 7 days. So, anyway. Yeah, but it doesn't go so well for these guys. Yep. Alright, so God judged those who rebelled against Moses and Aaron by putting them to death, ultimately. Yeah, not by choosing which people were holy. Yeah, well, ultimately the censors that these unholy men had, they were considered to be holy. Yeah. Yeah. Alright, and then God would speak to Moses and Aaron whenever Korah and the congregation are gathered at the tabernacle door. That God says, "Separate yourselves from among this congregation that I might consume them in a moment." Yep. And then they fell on their faces and said, "O God, the God of the spirits and all flesh, shall one man sin and you be angry with all the congregation?" So the Lord answered Moses' intercession by calling the people to depart from the tents so that only the rebels would be judged. And this phrase, the God of all the spirits of all flesh, this only appears here and also in Numbers 27:16. So Moses called on the omniscient God who knows the heart of everyone to judge those who had sinned and those only. So basically, don't judge the whole congregation, probably not, the whole congregation of Israel, but only judge these guys who have sinned, that are a part of this rebellion, basically. Yep. And so the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the congregation, saying, get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." Yep. And so Moses spoke, saying, "Depart from the tents of these wicked men. Don't touch anything of theirs, lest that you should be consumed in all of their sins." So they got away from those tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Yep, and Dathan and Abiram, they came out and stood at the door of their tents with their wives, children, and sons. And then Moses says, "By this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works. I've not done them of my own will. If these men die naturally like all men, or if they're visited by the common fate of all men, well, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a new thing, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the pit, then you'll understand that these men have rejected the Lord." And that's exactly what happens. So a new thing. This supernatural opening of the earth to swallow the rebels was a sign of God's wrath and the vindication of Moses and Aaron. Yeah, that really they were sent of the Lord, and that these men rejected the Lord ultimately. Yeah. So after Moses finished speaking, the ground split apart, the earth opened its mouth and swallowed these people up with their households and all the men, with Korah and with all their goods. Now their households, Numbers 26:11 actually indicates that this did not include their children. Yeah, because, children were not to be punished, for the parents' sin. Alright. And so all of them went down alive and into the pit, and then the earth closed over them, and then they perished from the assembly. Yep. And then the people of Israel fled at their cry, and they actually said, "No, oh boy, lest the earth swallow us up also." Yeah, I guess they were afraid that would happen also to them. And then the fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering incense. Yeah, these leaders, of course, these guys, they were a part of the rebellion, so they died too. Yep. 250 leaders of the congregation. Yep. So so these 250 leaders of Israel had brought censers filled with fire before the Lord. Now these censers were holy to the Lord, since they've been used in the tabernacle. And therefore Eleazar was commanded to hammer out the metal censers into a covering for the altar, and that covering was to be a perpetual reminder that God had chosen Aaron and his descendants for the priesthood, and no one else. Yeah. But then, of course, Christ is the ultimate high priest. Yeah. Now, he wasn't from the line of Aaron. Yeah, but he's the ultimate priest. So, all right, well, that's pretty much the end of that part. And then here's one final section in chapter 16. Complaints of the people. On the next day, all of the congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You have killed the people of the Lord." No, they didn't. Now it happened, when the congregation gathered against Moses and Aaron, they turned toward the tabernacle of meeting, and suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. And then Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle of meeting, and then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Get away from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." And so they fell on their faces, and Moses said to Aaron, "Take a censer and put fire in it from the altar. Put incense on it, and take it quickly to the congregation, and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun." And Aaron took it as Moses commanded, and ran into the midst of the assembly. And already the plague had begun among the people. And so he put in the incense and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living. So the plague was stopped. And now those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died in Korah's incident. And so Aaron turned to Moses at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, for the plague had stopped. Okay. So instead of bringing about the repentance of the people, the Lord's wrath that fell on Korah and his companions, that only led to more complaining. And though the children of Israel held Moses and Aaron accountable for the people who had been killed by the Lord, it was actually the intervention of Moses and Aaron for the entire nation that saved them from destruction because of their opposition to God. Yeah, if they didn't make atonement right there, who knows how many more of them could have been wiped out for their rebellion and their complaining. Yep. Yeah, and we deserve to be wiped out for our rebellion, but it's only Jesus' sacrifice, the atoning sacrifice, that appeases the wrath of God against us. And incense was actually symbolic of prayer. So Aaron interceded in prayer, and the plague stopped. But you had 14,700 die. And that's also in 1 Corinthians 10. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 10, real quick. Yeah, I said I would reference this some, and here I go again. 1 Corinthians 10, here we go. Let me see if I can find this here. Yeah, 10:10. And they complain, yeah. So, Some of them did, and they were destroyed by the destroyer. They complained, and they were destroyed. So this incident recorded in Numbers 16, the same angel that slayed the firstborn of the Egyptians, 70,000 men, 70,000 men because of David's census in 2 Samuel 24, and the entire Assyrian army that was besieging Jerusalem. Basically being destroyed by the destroyer, by plague there, since they were complaining against God after he judged those wicked men who rebelled against Moses and Aaron. And ultimately these things were, and along with those other acts of sin from the wilderness generation mentioned in 1 Corinthians 10, it was written for our admonition, upon whose ends of the ages had come. That we would not, follow in their evil examples. All right, and also there's not only that reference in 1 Corinthians 10, but there's also a reference to Korah's rebellion in the little book of Jude, real quick, and then I'll end with that. In verse 11 of Jude, woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and have run greedily in the error of Balaam for profit, which, Lord willing, I'll get to Balaam at some point in Numbers, and perished in the rebellion of Korah. So, woe, in declaring ultimate spiritual judgment on the apostates, because this is warning against apostates and false teachers, Jude followed the examples of the prophets and of Christ, pronouncing the judgment of woe. So the severest judgment of all will come upon apostates because they followed in the same path as Cain. Cain was a murderer. And Balaam, who was the prophet for profit, hired to curse Israel, which, Lord willing, we'll get to that in Numbers 22. And Korah, they openly rebelled against God's will regarding sacrifice. Cain. And then, of course, Balaam, he was hired to curse Israel. But he did actually, he didn't do it with his words, but he did it with his actions. And he ultimately lost his life as a result. And that's in Numbers 31. And, of course, the rebellion of Korah with the 250 Jewish leaders. They rejected their God-appointed leadership of Moses and Aaron in an attempt to impose his will upon God and the people. And apostates will unquestionably meet the same end as Korah, divine judgment, false teachers. And ultimately, you reject the one that Moses points to, Jesus. You end up rejecting him. Ultimately, you will suffer divine judgment as well. But he's the only one who could atone for your sin so that you won't suffer the wrath of God for your rebellion as these people did. Turn to the ultimate high priest who makes atonement for you. And turn from rebellion and turn to Christ ultimately. Alright, well, that's pretty much the end of Numbers 16, and Lord willing, I'll get to what Prager has to say about it. But until then, may God bless you, and the grace and mercy won by Jesus, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all.